The avoidant experiences intense longing for you that contradicts everything their defended presentation suggests about emotional detachment and independence. They experience a burning, aching desire for your presence that persists across weeks or months or years after the relationship ended. This desire intrudes into their daily awareness despite their attempts to suppress thoughts of you. It activates their body and their emotions in ways their defended psychology usually prevents. They think about you constantly with a frequency that surprises and disturbs them, given their typical defended ability to deactivate and move on from previous partners. They miss you with an intensity that feels overwhelming when it breaks through their defended barriers, reaching conscious awareness. They long for specific elements of connection with you. They long for your understanding that made them feel known in unprecedented ways. They long for your presence that provided emotional access and regulation they cannot generate independently. They long for the intimacy you created that allowed them to experience themselves more fully than defended isolation allows. This burning heart for you exists alongside their defended patterns that made the relationship unsustainable. It exists alongside their continued inability to sustain an intimate relationship, alongside their maintenance of a defensive structure that prevents them from building a healthy partnership, even while they experience profound longing for exactly the partnership you offered. The burning is a real, authentic emotional experience. It is not a performance designed to manipulate you, not a strategic expression calculated to restore the relationship, not a temporary crisis-driven activation that will fade once the immediate trigger passes. The avoidant genuinely burns for you in ways that create suffering because the burning remains unresolved. They cannot have you because their patterns destroyed the relationship. They cannot stop wanting you because you provided what their psychology desperately needs. They cannot act on the burning through genuine pursuit because the vulnerability required for authentic pursuit terrifies their defended structure. Even while the defended structure burns with longing for what vulnerability with you created, the burning particularly intensifies because you are unavailable rather than because you are available. The unavailability paradoxically increases their desire in ways that psychological research on avoidant attachment consistently demonstrates. Avoidants activate and pursue when a partner is unavailable or leaving, yet deactivate and withdraw when a partner is available and pursuing them. Your current unavailability removes the threat that your availability created. It allows them to experience longing without having to manage the anxiety that receiving what they long for would generate. It lets them burn for you safely because the burning remains a fantasy rather than requiring vulnerable action toward actual reconnection. The burning would likely diminish if you became available again. It would transform from intense longing into defended discomfort as your availability activated their engulfment fears and their defenses against intimacy. Yet, while you remain unavailable, while reconnection remains fantasy rather than threatening reality, they can burn for you with an intensity their defenses prevent them from experiencing toward available partners. The burning serves specific psychological functions beyond genuine feeling. It serves to maintain you as a focal point, preventing them from genuinely moving forward. It serves to protect their ego through positioning you as the one who got away, rather than facing that they were an inadequate partner. It serves to avoid intimacy with new partners through comparing everyone unfavorably to the idealized memory of you that their burning maintains. Yet recognizing these defensive functions does not mean the burning is not real. The burning is an authentic, painful longing that coexists with the defensive functions that longing serves. They genuinely burn for you, experiencing real emotional and physical activation when they think about you, while the burning also serves to keep them stuck in defended patterns, preventing the growth that genuine therapeutic work would require. The burning is both a real feeling and a defensive avoidance, both an authentic longing for the connection you represented and a defended protection against the vulnerability that connection would require if pursued authentically. The longing intensifies because your absence removes the threat your presence created. The avoidant experiences their most intense longing for you during your absence rather than during your presence, because absence eliminates the specific threats that your availability created for their defended psychology. When you were present and available, when the relationship was ongoing and you were pursuing them or expressing desire for deeper connection, your presence activated multiple defended fears that made engagement with you feel threatening despite consciously wanting a relationship with you. Your emotional availability threatened their defended emotional control. Your feelings and your emotional expression reminded them of their own suppressed emotions, creating anxiety about feelings breaking through defensive barriers. Your desire for intimacy threatened their defended autonomy. Your needs for closeness activated their engulfment fears, making them feel controlled or consumed by your expectations. Your ability to see beneath their defended presentation threatened their defensive structure. Your understanding meant they could not maintain the false self that protected them from vulnerability. It meant you witnessed wounded parts they learned were unacceptable. These threats operated largely outside conscious awareness. The avoidant did not think explicitly, "This person's emotional availability threatens my emotional control," but instead experienced vague anxiety, discomfort, overwhelm, or irritation when around you that they might have attributed to external stressors or to incompatibility, rather than recognizing the feelings stemmed from a defended response to the intimacy you offered. The threats generated automatic defensive responses: withdrawal to restore distance, deactivation to suppress feelings your presence activated, criticism of you to create justification for distance, minimization of the relationship to protect against vulnerable investment. These defensive responses operated to manage the threats your presence created, to restore a defended, comfortable distance when intimacy exceeded their tolerance, to protect the defensive structure when you're seeing them threatened, maintain defenses. Your absence eliminates all these threats, allowing the avoidant to experience longing without the defended anxiety that longing would generate if you were available. Your emotional availability no longer threatens their control because you are not present expressing emotion. They can imagine connecting with you without having to manage your actual feelings or face their own feelings your emotions would activate. Your desire for intimacy no longer threatens their autonomy because you are not available requesting closeness. They can fantasize about intimacy without experiencing the engulfment fears actual intimacy generates. Your ability to see them no longer threatens their defenses because you are not present, perceiving beneath their presentation. They can remember being known without experiencing the current vulnerability being seen creates. The absence transforms you from a threatening present reality into a safe, distant fantasy, where they can experience desire for connection without experiencing the anxiety connection creates. The removed threat particularly allows idealization, where memory selectively emphasizes positive aspects of the relationship and connection with you while minimizing negative aspects that made the relationship difficult or uncomfortable for their defended psychology. They remember your understanding without remembering how exposing being understood felt. They recall your patience without recalling how guilty your patience made them feel about their inadequate reciprocation. They think about the intimacy you created without thinking about how overwhelmed that intimacy made them feel when they were experiencing it. They focus on missing your presence without acknowledging that when you were present, they often wanted distance from your presence. This selective memory creates an idealized version of you and of the relationship that fuels intense longing, because the idealized version contains only what they want without containing what triggered their defenses when they actually had it. The safe distance absence creates also allows the avoidant to experience their suppressed feelings about you more fully than they could experience feelings when you were present. During the relationship, their defenses actively suppressed positive feelings to prevent vulnerable attachment. They could not let themselves feel how much you mattered because mattering meant vulnerability to loss. They could not acknowledge the depth of their caring because caring meant needing someone, which defenses prohibit. Your absence paradoxically allows these suppressed feelings to surface because feelings no longer carry the threat they carried when you were available. Feeling how much they miss you does not threaten to create vulnerable dependence because you are not available to depend upon. Acknowledging how much you mattered does not threaten to create attachment because attachment to an unavailable person is safer than attachment to an available person who might require vulnerable engagement. Recognizing the depth of caring does not threaten defenses because caring for an absent person allows emotional experience without requiring vulnerable expression or reciprocal action. The intensified longing during absence also reflects the avoidant finally experiencing the loss they defended against experiencing while the relationship was ending. During the breakup or during the period when the relationship was deteriorating, their defenses likely minimized their feelings about losing you. They might have felt relief about escaping intimacy that overwhelmed them. They might have deactivated quickly, protecting themselves from grief about the loss. They might have rationalized the ending through focusing on negative aspects or incompatibilities. These defensive responses prevented them from fully experiencing what losing you meant at the time the loss was occurring. Yet with distance from the immediate crisis, with safe remove from the threat your availability created, defenses relax enough that they begin to experience the grief and loss they defended against during the actual ending. They begin to feel how much your absence affects them. They begin to recognize what they lost. They begin to experience emotions about the ending that defenses suppressed when the ending was occurring. Understanding that longing intensifies because absence removes the threat allows recognition of the cruel irony in avoidance psychology. They burn most intensely for you when you are unavailable, yet would likely deactivate if you became available again. The burning feels like evidence they genuinely want a relationship with you. It feels like authentic desire that should motivate authentic pursuit. Yet the burning exists partly because you are unavailable, making the burning a safe fantasy rather than a threatening reality. If you responded to their longing by becoming available, by offering reconnection, by being willing to try again, their burning would likely transform into defended anxiety as your availability recreated all the threats that your presence originally generated. The intense longing would diminish, replaced by familiar, defended discomfort, withdrawal, deactivation, as your availability activated their engulfment fears and their defended resistance to intimacy. The burning is real, yet burning is safer than having. Fantasy is more comfortable than reality. Longing for unavailable you is more tolerable than engaging with available you, who would require vulnerable, reciprocal, intimate engagement. Their defenses continue to resist despite a burning that suggests they desperately want exactly the engagement defenses prevent them from sustaining. They are romanticizing the relationship their patterns prevented from thriving. The avoidant experiences a burning heart for you, accompanied by romanticized memories of the relationship that selectively emphasize moments of connection and positive experiences while systematically minimizing or erasing their defended patterns that made the relationship unsustainable and that caused significant harm to you throughout the partnership. The romanticized narrative focuses on highlights, moments when they felt understood by you in unprecedented ways, times when intimacy felt good rather than threatening, experiences of connection that allowed them to feel more whole and alive than defended isolation typically allows. They remember how you made them feel known, how your presence provided emotional access they cannot achieve independently, how the relationship with you represented their closest experience of intimacy and authentic connection despite their defended limitations, making that intimacy sporadic and inconsistent. This romanticized focus serves the specific psychological function of allowing them to burn for an idealized relationship rather than having to face the actual relationship their patterns created. The actual relationship with you included their frequent withdrawal that created pain and confusion for you. It included their emotional unavailability that left your needs unmet. It included their inconsistency that made you question the relationship status and their investment. It included their defended minimization of your significance that made you feel unimportant, despite their current burning suggesting you were profoundly important. The actual relationship included your suffering. It included your hurt when they withdrew without explanation, your frustration with patterns you could not change through your understanding and patience, your grief about unmet needs, and about the potential relationship that never became due to their defended limitations. The actual relationship ended because patterns made it unsustainable. It ended because you could no longer tolerate treatment that fell below acceptable standards, or because their patterns drove you away despite your exceptional tolerance, or because they rejected you when intimacy exceeded their defended capacity. The romanticization erases or minimizes these difficult realities, allowing them to focus on an idealized version where the relationship was a near-perfect partnership destroyed by unfortunate circumstances or bad timing, rather than facing that the relationship was a dysfunctional dynamic their patterns created that caused legitimate harm, requiring your eventual self-protective departure. They remember your understanding without remembering how they took advantage of that understanding through continuing patterns you understood, rather than changing patterns your understanding should have made safe to address. They recall intimacy without recalling how they destroyed intimacy through withdrawal whenever closeness exceeded comfortable defended limits. They think about connection without thinking about how their patterns prevented connection from being sustained or reliable. They focus on what the relationship could have been without acknowledging their defended limitations or why the relationship never became what it could have been. The romanticization particularly operates through comparison, where current life or current relationship attempts compare unfavorably to the idealized memory of the relationship with you. Current life feels empty or meaningless compared to the remembered connection with you. This comparison erases that life during the relationship also included a defended emptiness between moments of connection, that your presence provided relief from emptiness rather than eliminating the emptiness their defended structure creates regardless of partner. Current relationship attempts feel unsatisfying compared to the romanticized relationship with you. This comparison ignores that the relationship with you was also unsatisfying in crucial ways, including their inability to reciprocate adequately, their patterns that prevented relationship stability, and their defended limitations that left your needs chronically unmet. Current partners fall short compared to the idealized you. This comparison forgets that you also experienced their defended patterns as inadequate partnership, that you also eventually left because the relationship became intolerable despite your exceptional qualities. The romanticization also manifests through selective memory about the ending, where they recall the loss without recalling their responsibility for creating the conditions that made the ending necessary. They remember the pain of losing you, focusing on how much your absence affects them. They recall that the relationship ended, focusing on missing what they lost. Yet the romanticized narrative minimizes that their patterns created the unsustainable dynamic, that their defended limitations prevented them from meeting your needs, that their inability to reciprocate adequately made your departure necessary self-protection rather than premature abandonment. The romanticization allows them to position themselves as a person grieving a lost love, rather than as a person whose defended inadequacy destroyed a valuable relationship, a positioning that protects their ego while preventing the accountability that facing their role honestly would require. The romanticized burning serves the defensive function of maintaining focus on external loss, on losing you, on unfortunate circumstances, on bad timing, rather than requiring internal examination of the defended patterns that created the loss. If they face the actual relationship honestly, including how their patterns harmed you and made the relationship unsustainable, this facing would demand examining whether patterns serve them or cost them. It would require considering therapeutic work to address patterns and would necessitate accountability for the harm patterns caused. Romanticizing allows them to avoid this difficult internal work, by keeping the focus external, on missing you, on hoping circumstances might align differently in the future, on burning for an idealized relationship that never actually existed in the form they currently remember it existing. The burning for the romanticized version protects them from having to face that they need fundamental change to have the relationship they claim to want. Understanding that they romanticize the relationship their patterns prevented from thriving allows recognition that the burning reflects an idealized fantasy rather than an accurate memory of the actual relationship dynamic. They burn for a version of the relationship that emphasizes your exceptional qualities and moments of genuine connection while erasing their defended patterns and your suffering those patterns created. They long for a partnership that existed only in highlight moments rather than as sustainable daily reality. They miss an idealized you who provided understanding and emotional access without remembering the actual you who also needed understanding and emotional reciprocation they could not provide. The burning is a genuine feeling about a fantasy rather than a genuine feeling about reality. They authentically long for an idealized relationship. While that longing specifically depends on a romanticization that erases how their defended patterns made the actual relationship painful and unsustainable for you, how their limitations prevented the relationship from thriving despite your exceptional efforts, and how their inadequacy, rather than external circumstances or timing, was the fundamental reason the relationship could not continue without causing you continued harm. Their romanticized burning conveniently forgets this, while focusing exclusively on their current pain about loss. The burning won't translate to change capacity, only to continued patterns with new people. The avoidant experiences intense burning for you that feels significant and meaningful. It feels like evidence of profound caring. It feels like recognition of your value they failed to appreciate adequately while you were available. It feels like emotional activation that should motivate them toward growth or toward genuine effort to address the patterns that cost them the relationship with you. The burning creates suffering that theoretically could serve as powerful motivation for therapeutic work. Suffering that reveals their patterns cost them something they deeply valued. Suffering that demonstrates their defended structure prevents them from having what they genuinely want. Suffering that might inspire commitment to changing patterns rather than accepting continued loss of valuable relationships to unchanged defended limitations. The burning, combined with recognition of what they lost, seems like optimal conditions for change motivation. It seems like a crisis that could finally generate willingness to engage difficult therapeutic work addressing the defensive structure. Yet the burning almost never translates into genuine change capacity through therapeutic work addressing defended patterns. The burning remains an emotional experience, painful longing, intense missing, profound regret about loss, without transforming into action toward developing different relational capacities. They burn for you, yet they do not engage trauma-informed therapy to address the attachment wounds creating defended patterns. They suffer about losing you, yet they do not do the internal work, examining their defenses and developing insight about how patterns harm themselves and others. They recognize their patterns cost them a valuable relationship, yet they do not practice vulnerability or work to expand their tolerance for intimacy. They long for the connection you provided, yet they do not develop their own emotional awareness and regulation capacity that would reduce dependence on a partner for emotional access. The failure to translate burning into therapeutic work stems from multiple defended barriers that prevent motivation from becoming action. The burning itself is a passive experience, feeling emotion about loss, while change requires active, sustained effort over months and years. Feeling badly about patterns is not equivalent to doing the difficult work of restructuring those patterns through therapy. The burning also exists alongside continued defended resistance to the vulnerability that therapeutic work requires. They can burn for you while maintaining defended barriers against examining the wounds that created patterns, while resisting vulnerable exploration of childhood experiences that taught them intimacy is dangerous, while avoiding the emotional exposure that healing attachment wounds necessitates. They can suffer about the consequences of patterns while remaining completely unwilling to engage the vulnerable internal work that addressing patterns would demand. The burning without change capacity manifests through them repeating identical patterns with new partners despite painful burning about losing you to those same patterns. They pursue a new relationship, drawn by initial attraction and hope that this time will be different. The initial period includes activation, where they engage and pursue, creating the impression they are invested and available. Yet, as intimacy develops, as the new partner expresses needs for emotional availability and consistent presence, their familiar, defended patterns reassert. They withdraw when closeness exceeds tolerance. They deactivate when emotions threaten their control. They create distance when intimacy activates engulfment fears. They demonstrate the same emotional unavailability and inconsistency that destroyed the relationship with you. The new partner experiences the same pain and confusion you experienced. The new relationship becomes unsustainable for the same reasons the relationship with you became unsustainable. They lose another valuable person to unchanged patterns while continuing to burn for you as the person they lost to patterns they continue repeating with others. The burning for you specifically coexists with an inability to sustain a relationship with new people who resemble you or who trigger similar dynamics. They seek partners similar to you, hoping to recreate what they lost. They seek understanding, patient, emotionally intelligent partners who might provide what you provided. Yet when they find partners resembling you, those partners trigger the same defended responses you triggered. Understanding feels exposing, activating withdrawal. Patience highlights inadequacy, creating guilt. Emotional intelligence perceives beneath defenses, generating defended resistance. They cannot sustain a relationship with new partners who resemble you despite burning for you because the resemblance triggers the same patterns, because their defensive structure remains unchanged regardless of how much they burn for a relationship with the person their patterns prevented them from sustaining. The burning creates suffering about losing you, yet does not create the capacity to sustain a relationship with anyone like you without the therapeutic work they refuse to engage. The continued patterns with new people while burning for you reveal that the burning serves the defensive function of maintaining focus on the specific loss of you, rather than examining the general pattern of losing people to defended limitations. If they faced that they lose valuable relationships repeatedly due to patterns, rather than facing that they lost a specific person, you, due to circumstances, this recognition would demand addressing the patterns that create repeated losses. Burning for you specifically allows them to avoid this pattern recognition. It allows them to believe the problem was losing a specific, irreplaceable you, rather than recognizing the problem is their defended incapacity to sustain an intimate relationship with any valuable partner, regardless of that partner's specific qualities. Burning keeps them focused on what they lost, focused on you, on the idealized relationship, on the specific pain about your absence, rather than examining why they lose people, what patterns create losses, and what internal work would prevent future similar losses. Understanding that burning will not translate to change capacity allows recognition that their intense longing is a genuine feeling that coexists with a complete unwillingness to do the work that would address patterns. They authentically burn for you. The longing is a real emotional experience rather than a performance. Yet authentic longing does not indicate readiness for change. It does not demonstrate commitment to therapeutic work. It does not mean they have developed the insight or capacity that would make reconnection viable. They can burn intensely while remaining exactly the same defended person whose patterns destroyed the relationship. They can long profoundly while maintaining complete resistance to the vulnerability healing would require. They can suffer about loss while continuing to create similar losses with new people through unchanged patterns.